Hyenas get a bad rap and are blamed for contributing to a generation of lion lovers' trauma. The hyena's reputation is so poor that you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone that actually likes them, which is a shame because there's more than one subspecies and they're all fascinating animals. And today we're looking at the cause of all this bad publicity. This hyena is the one you think of when you think of the name hyena. That's right, after 3 videos of build-up, it's finally time to look at the spotted hyena to figure out if all the hate is justified and if their reputation of truly savage scavengers is really deserved. Spotted hyenas are now found exclusively in Africa. However, there is evidence through the fossil record that they were once found in Europe and Asia, ranging as far north as the Ural Mountains of Russia. Today, they are found in most sub-Saharan countries and live in pretty much every environment Africa has, from the savannah to the southern rainforests of the Congo. But they don't do the desert very well, which is the reason why spotted hyenas aren't found in North Africa. Spotted hyenas are the largest species of hyena, starting at a height of 70 to 91 centimeters at the shoulders, a length of around 65 to 165.8 centimeters. Now, the weight will vary depending on where they live, but the general trend is that females will be heavier than males, being around 70 kilograms on average, compared to males who will just weigh in at 60 kilograms. Spotted hyenas can reach top speeds of 40 miles per hour. They will use to chase down prey and also to run away from threats. But why are these guys the biggest hyenas? And how have they managed to reach a lifespan of 20 years in the wild? Although, in captivity, one individual did reach the age of 41 in a zoo. These pretty impressive stats come down to the unique features of the spotted hyena, starting with their ability to shatter bones. And spotted hyenas have one of the most powerful bites in the animal kingdom, which for reference is more powerful than a brown bear and 40% more powerful than a leopard's. Spotted hyenas get their name, surprisingly, after the fur, which has lots of grey spots around the body, and is the only true hyena which actually has spots, with most having stripes. Spotted hyenas also don't have the traditional hyena mane. The reason for this unique colour scheme is to help them camouflage into the African bush, improving their hunting successes. Spotted hyenas have evolved a keen sense of sight, hearing, and smell. All of these give them a great advantage when it comes to hunting down prey. Also, like most carnivores in Africa, they are most active at night. So, as a result, they've had to develop night vision. The reason for this nocturnal lifestyle mainly boils down to the heat of Africa, making it less palatable for most carnivores to hunt in. Spotted hyenas are also incredibly intelligent, with some scientists estimating spotted hyenas have the same level of intelligence as certain species of primates, which was proven in an experiment where scientists hung 2 ropes in an enclosure and required a pair of hyenas to pull the ropes in unison. The pair, as a reward, would get food. It took only 2 minutes for the spotted hyena to figure out this mechanism, whereas in the primates tested, it took significantly longer, including chimps, and the scientists needed to train them on how to do it. And they would repeat this experiment multiple times with different pairings of hyenas, all coming out with the same result. In the scenario where they mixed a less experienced hyena with one who had already done the experiment, the more experienced hyena helped the less experienced one learn how to use the mechanism. So yeah, I think it's fair to say these guys are extremely intelligent. Now, why is that? Well, it's probably down to their lifestyle, as spotted hyenas live in clans together, with a highly complex social structure, as well as the fact they have to deal with the largest murder kitten in Africa, so they need to have a good head on their shoulders. This is also why spotted hyenas are often seen as tricksters, because of their intelligent and shy nature, making them feared by the people of the regions where they live. One of the issues with this reputation is that it has had the result of bleeding into how we view this animal in all areas of its life. Perhaps most prominent of these is its diet. Spotted hyenas are often labelled as scavengers. In fact, I said it at the beginning, and was probably in the title. But, I hate to say it, but this is a lie circulated by lion misinformation campaigns. The reality is that up to 70% of the typical hyena's diet consists of kills they've made. And this has the result of making them the most carnivorous member of the Hyenidae family. But they will eat just about anything that moves, from birds and hares right up to bewilderbeasts and various species of ungulates, such as elands and Thompson's gazelle, to name but a few. But they stop short of the largest animals in Africa, such as Cape buffalo and giraffes. Although I should say, there have been cases where particularly large clans of hyenas have targeted Cape buffalo. But this comes with a caveat of these guys were usually extremely old, which probably incentivized the hyenas to take them down. Spotted hyenas are also known to eat various fruit, insects, and eggs. And if there is no meat around, the spotted hyena's hunting strategy is different to the rest of their cousins, partly because of their carnivorous diet, but also the fact they hunt together, whereas most other species of hyena prefer solitary scavenging/hunting. But the spotted hyena will use the tactic where the clan will target the weakest member of a herd, and will bite at the heel whilst running the prey to the point of exhaustion, at which point they will begin to slowly devour the prey. It should be noted that whilst this whole process is going on, the prey is still alive. Another interesting thing that relates to their diet: the hierarchy you get, the better access to food they will receive. So, those at the bottom are often left with the bone, and they can eat bone. Specifically, they eat the bone marrow, which has the result of wearing down their teeth, and this is one of the reasons why lower down ranked hyenas often don't live as long as those higher up in the food chain. But this doesn't make sense to you and me, so it's worth exploring why they do this. But before we get onto that, just a quick request from me if you wouldn't mind. Could you press that like button and subscribe? It really helps me out and shows that we're doing something right here. Also, leave a comment below on what your favourite species of hyena is, as well as an animal you'd like me to cover, and I'll make sure that I add it to the list. Anyway, let's carry on by looking at the behaviours of the spotted hyena. As I mentioned earlier, spotted hyenas are social animals, living in clans which can consist of up to 80 individuals. But this does depend on where they live, because in more arid environments they will live in smaller groups. Spotted hyena society is a female-dominated one, with the lowest female outranking the highest male. Now, there are some family bonds here, and spotted hyenas can distinguish and recognise relatives as far removed as great aunts. Spotted hyenas live in territories which can range from 15 to 400 square miles. They will mark their territories by members of the clan using pre-designated communal latrines. Typically, inter-clan conflict is rare, and will usually respect and accept the boundaries of the territories. However, typically spotted hyenas will ignore this during times of food shortages, and males will also ignore these boundaries when looking for mates. When approaching an unknown hyena clan, males will often adopt a submissive body temperature. But what's made the spotted hyena most famous is probably their giggling, which I'm sure needs no introduction, but here's a sample. Which raises the question of why the hell do they sound like that? Well, it's all to do with communication between the clans, as it can show dominance or submission, as well as a variety of other different sounds. All of these signals will have different sounds associated with them, and these communications can tell other hyenas information about the speaking hyena, such as their age and gender. It should be noted that the whole clan will rarely come together, and when looking for food, they will separate into smaller groups. Spotted hyenas also utilise dens like the rest of their cousins. The denning habits will depend on the individual clan. Some keep the same den for multiple years, whilst others will use multiple dens over a period. While spotted hyenas can, and in some cases do, dig their own dens, usually they will use the abandoned dens of other animals found in Africa, such as aardvarks. An adult spotted hyena often cannot use the maximum space of a den, with most tunnels being dug by pups and are thus too narrow for the adults to fit in. There are also multiple chambers within hyena dens. This is thought to be a way to decrease the chances of cubs being discovered if there's a predator in the area. And it's not uncommon to be 20 cubs living in a den. Spotted hyenas also have some hygiene standards, usually going away from the den to take a dump. However, they will pee literally wherever they want. But still, it's something, and arguably is better than the French in the 17th century. All this background is important to understanding how hyenas breed, because spotted hyenas are promiscuous, and spotted hyena breeding is weird, because unlike pretty much every single other subspecies, female spotted hyenas have something called a pseudopenis, which, I'll be honest with you, is what it sounds like on the tin. Now, there are two theories as to why spotted hyena females have evolved this. The first and primary function is to give them complete and total control over who she breeds with, but I'll come back to this in a minute. The other thing it's thought to do is a way to deter other females from attacking her, especially when they're cubs. So, it's kind of a form of camouflage. Most spotted hyena breeding occurs during the wet season, but they could do it literally whenever. Females will also prefer males who were born or joined the clan after they were. This also applies to older females, although they have been known to breed with individuals who they are close to. And unlike most animals, females will usually choose more passive males rather than the hyper-aggressive ones. Now, this is where the pseudopenis comes in, because what it does is essentially when the pseudopenis erects, it stops spotted hyena males from breeding with the female, thus showing her discontent and making sure that she isn't carrying the cubs of somebody that she doesn't think is worthy. Anyway, after the deed is done, if successful, gestation will vary depending on the individual, but usually will last for around 110 days. Female spotted hyenas also possess a chemical called androgen, which is the main reason why spotted hyena females are much more muscular than males. And the rule in female spotted hyena society is the higher your mother is up on the food chain, the more androgen you have access to, which will dictate the possibility of you rising up the ranks and also challenging the place to be the dominant female in the clan. Now, where the female gives birth often depends on their place in the hierarchy, with dominant females often giving birth in the communal den, but lower ranking females will often give birth in private dens. The reason for this difference is a way to reduce access by other spotted hyenas to the pups, which they can use to improve their relationship with the dominant females, and thus giving them the possibility of rising up the ranks. Still, giving birth for a female spotted hyena is very risky, as the pup can get stuck in the pseudopenis, and it's such an issue that maternal mortality in spotted hyenas is thought to be 20%, although this will improve after the first time. Still, this shows how one adaptation, which is very useful in one aspect of life, can have a significant negative downside in other areas. Spotted hyenas are born in a litter which will consist of around 1 to 4 pups, but typically you're looking at either 2 or 3. And I'll be honest with you, this is where things can get quite brutal, because if the litter is all one gender, they will attack one another, and this is partly helped by the fact they're born with their eyes open and have short canines. The reason for this is partly to secure resources, also to establish a hierarchy within the pups. The result is that 25% of infant spotted hyena deaths of both genders are the result of their siblings killing them. At birth, both genders will weigh around 1.5 kilograms on average. They will be reliant on their mother's milk for the first few weeks, but they can last a long time in between feedings, whilst the mother herself feeds. And this is helped by the fact that the spotted hyena's milk has the most protein and fat content of any terrestrial mammal, but I probably wouldn't recommend trying to milk one when they've got teeth like this, which, I'll be honest with you, is a bit more lethal than a cow. Anyway, at some point between the ages of 2 to 6 weeks old, the cubs will be moved by the mother into the communal den. Spotted hyenas will be raised pretty much exclusively by the mother, who in turn are highly protective of her offspring, often fighting off males and other females who could attempt to bully her pup. However, there is an exception to the no boys allowed rule, and that's the father, who will have slightly more leeway in accessing his cubs. And this extends into the cubs' adulthood, with female cubs often giving their fathers more leeway when it comes to feeding. Anyway, on the topic of food, they will be weaned after 12 to 16 months. Now, by this point, they should have started eating foods, will have lost their cub fur at the age of 2 months, and will start joining hunts by the age of 1. Both genders reach sexual maturity at the age of 3, at which point, if they're female, they'll slot into the hierarchy underneath their mother, whereas males will go on their corresponding place in the male hierarchy, although they can choose to leave this clan and join a new clan. Or, another alternative is joining a nomadic bachelor group before joining up with a new clan. But that doesn't mean that life for a spotted hyena is easy, because whilst they're near the top in terms of predators found in Africa, there is one animal which has made it its personal mission to smite any spotted hyena children that it finds, and that is, as you might have guessed, the lion. With the lions killing spotted hyena cubs, and in turn, spotted hyenas will often kill lion cubs. It's really a generational conflict, which probably goes back millions of years. Another area where these two compete is over food. Despite what you may have heard, that hyenas will steal lions' kills, in most cases, it's actually the lion who steals the hyena's kills. Although, there have been cases of spotted hyenas successfully fighting off groups of lionesses. Although, it should be pointed out that there are lots more cases of lions killing and mauling spotted hyenas without any provocation. It should also be noted, the spotted hyenas will purposely avoid lions, keeping out of the way. Now, what about the other African cats? Well, I'll be honest with you, the cheetah falls like a wet piece of paper, as hyenas will easily steal their kills, because of how tired they are after a hunt and how it's built, although they will stand a slightly better chance if they're in a coalition. But leopards are another matter, as they're far more willing to stand their ground over food, particularly if they're males. However, the odds still favour the spotted hyena, although there are accounts of leopards killing hyenas. Now, what about the rest of the noteworthy predators in Africa? Well, the African wild dog and the spotted hyena have a very similar relationship to the spotted hyena and the lion. However, in this matchup, it's the spotted hyena that holds the advantage. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that African wild dogs are pieces of wet paper. They're incredibly ruthless and also successful hunters, and have been known as a pack to hold off individual spotted hyenas. However, if they were to meet a clan of spotted hyenas, they would stand no chance. And there is actually a correlation between low African wild dog populations and high spotted hyena populations, showing that African wild dogs will typically try to avoid spotted hyenas. Now, the relationship between the rest of the canid family, like jackals and African wolves, is actually fairly decent, as whatever scraps the spotted hyena leaves, these guys will feed on, and spotted hyenas will typically tolerate their presence so long as they keep their distance. However, if they overstep their bounds, spotted hyenas will kill them. But aside from in matters of food or cub security, normally the canids and the spotted hyenas will typically leave each other alone. Now, that brings us on to one final thing, and that is, what's the relationship like with their extended family? Well, I hate to say it, but the brown hyenas don't get along particularly well with spotted hyenas, and usually the spotted hyena will end up chasing off any food they find. However, if the spotted hyena is alone, it's a more even playing field. It should also be noted that the spotted hyenas and aardwolves don't typically come into contact with each other, and the general trend is that the aardwolf will just stay out of the spotted hyena's way. But if it hasn't become obvious to you yet, the spotted hyena is in a pretty good spot in the African pecking order. But there's one animal that could wipe out all the spotted hyenas if it wanted to. Spotted hyenas and humans have a complex history, which dates back to the origins of our species. But in African culture, the spotted hyena has a vast amount of depictions, which will vary depending on the ethnic group. But typically, it's not good, with the Benin people believing they need to evacuate a village if a spotted hyena reveals itself in its proximity. Another area where spotted hyenas have a mixed reputation is Ethiopia. For example, with the locals living in the city of Harare feeding spotted hyena populations in the belief that they keep the devil away. But to the wider world, the view of the spotted hyena and other hyenas as a result is as a scavenger and cowards, not helped by their depictions in most media. Now, unlike most hyenas, spotted hyenas will kill livestock. However, it's at a fairly small rate, and this is also influenced by where you go and what local agricultural practices are, and also the availability of prey at the time at which these attacks happen. What you might be wondering when learning about the spotted hyena is how many people die as a result of them. And before we get into it, it should be noted the spotted hyenas are typically scared of people and will do their best to avoid any and all confrontation. That being said, between 2010 and 2012, there were 12 people killed by spotted hyenas, and unfortunately, half of these were children. Another thing that spotted hyenas do, which has given them a pretty bad reputation, is scavenge on the dead. And scientists have noticed there's an uptick in this behaviour when there's large amounts of conflicts going on in the regions in which they inhabit. And as a result of increased conflict, there is increased availability of bodies. Particularly, this behaviour has been seen in South Sudan due to the conflict which has been raging in that country. But it's not exclusive to this region and has been seen all across Africa. Spotted hyenas can be particularly bold. Now, this happens after living around people for a couple of decades, and I should stress this an exception to their normal behaviour. Still, in the capital of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, there's thought to be around 1,000 hyenas living in the city, who will feed on rubbish and feral cats and dogs. Spotted hyenas have been hunted throughout history. However, because of their less than stellar reputation, they didn't have to deal with the same amount of persecution as other African mammals did, such as lions. Now, people do keep spotted hyenas as pets. Why you would do this is beyond me, but nonetheless, there you go. Now, you will probably never see a spotted hyena in a zoo, because one, they're not the most popular animal, and two, and this is a good thing, their population is fairly stable. And interestingly, there have been many stories of training spotted hyenas for livestock protection purposes. Whilst they make good impromptu guard dogs, they're actually pretty hard to house train. A good example of this would be in 1696, where the Tower of London was going through what I would describe as its zoo phase, And one of the animals they had there was a spotted hyena, who managed, probably due to its incredibly powerful bite, to basically become an impromptu beaver and tear through a plank of wood which was in its enclosure. There was also a naturalist called Hans Kurtman, who kept a spotted hyena called Solomon, who he would have continued to keep if not for the fact he kept nicking cheese at the bar and the local warden's breakfast, often biting his way through the doors of the local establishments. As a result, Solomon would be given and would spend the rest of his days in Edinburgh Zoo. Spotted hyenas are in the category of least concern and are actually fairly common throughout all of Africa, although they are threatened by increased hunting and climate change, which could threaten these fascinating animals, and thus, whilst being fairly unsightly, they are definitely worth our protection. So that's it. All 4 species of hyena. So, this raises the question, what do I think about these animals? Well, I personally think that all of them are fascinating, with all 4 of them having unique behaviours, appearances, and how they've adapted to their environment, with all of them having their own methods and strategies for survival. And the Hyenidae family is a fairly good example of how habitat, availability of food, and where they live, and the ecological niche that they decide to fill, can affect how they evolve. And we humans, who have been living with hyenas for nearly millions of years, would not be the species we are without them, and they've played a fascinating role in our development as a species. And perhaps the fear of hyenas is a justified one, because it is thought that hyena ancestors would feed and kill humans. The hatred we have of pretty much every single species of hyena likely stems from this fact, and also the fact they look like a mixture between a cat and a dog. But still, they serve such a vital ecological role and help to contribute to this Earth's biodiversity that their loss, not only from the perspective of our species' story, but also from the perspective of the ecosystems they live in, would not only be highly detrimental, but also be a great tragedy. But on that closing remark, and the Hyenidae family all wrapped up, I'd like to thank you for watching all 4 of these videos and sticking with me. Next time, we'll cover something else. But in the meantime, if you haven't watched the other 4 videos in the Hyenidae family, I recommend you click this video above you to learn about them. Or, if that doesn't suit your fancy, I'd recommend looking at the video just below it on the okapi. All I've got to say on that note is thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.